Hello, everybody. Welcome to our daily devotional. My name is Jody. I'm one of the associate pastors at Parkway United Methodist Church, and we're glad that you could join us today. Well, I remember, as do I'm sure many of you, when we first heard news of the coronavirus outbreak in China. It was started in Wuhan, and I remember being glued to the news reports, watching to see what would happen. I remember praying for the people who were affected there and just amazed at how fast this new virus was spreading and how the news was changed daily, almost hourly it seemed. And then I remember thinking, we're safe here in America. And that pretty much changed overnight to total fear because it was going global and it was affecting the whole world at a pace that none of us expected. And so I remember, I think it was early March, we had a Chicago trip planned. And I remember thinking, I don't know if we should go on this Chicago trip. And so we were thinking about canceling it. But we had all these plans lined up, and one of them included celebrating my husband's birthday. And so we decided to go. Chicago's my hometown, so I was excited to go. But instead of just going as I would normally go and pack, and be excited about a trip, I was actually taking all of the precautions. I had masks, I had hand sanitizer, I had wipes, and I believe this was the very first time I went on a trip. And when the Lyft driver showed up at our door, I sanitized the entire Lyft car in about 90 seconds. That has never happened before. We were taking literally all the precautions. And every single Uber and Lyft ride we had in Chicago, I would sanitize before going in. When I went to the hotel, the very first question I asked was, do you clean doorknobs and light switches and tabletops? And they assured me yes. And so as I was going up to my room, I passed by one of the cleaning ladies and I asked her, do you clean doorknobs and light switches and tabletops? And she said, no. So I thought, okay. So I went to my room and I called the manager of housekeeping and I said, do you clean doorknobs and light switches and tabletops? I mean, I was on high alert. I did not want to be vacationing and come home with the coronavirus and affect all of us. I was traveling with my mom, who's older and has underlying health conditions. I have 3 young kids. So the housekeeping manager assured me they do. And then when the house cleaning lady came, I watched her and she did not clean any of those things. So I called the manager of the housekeeping manager of all the housekeeping staff. And it went on from there. Fear was with me a lot in those earlier weeks. I was watching the news all the time. And when I got home from Chicago, we had to cut short our trip, of course. We were all wearing our cloth masks coming home, even before the CDC recommended it. We had those on just because it made sense to me and because I was being very careful. I came home, and even though our home had not been occupied for 6 days or 5 days, we cleaned a thorough cleaning of it. So I was definitely on high alert, and I was thinking about the pandemic. I was praying. Our whole family was praying at every meal for the pandemic to stop, for our healthcare professionals, for the families who had loved ones dying. They would think it's crazy if anybody doesn't know about what's going on globally. And yet, it's been 5 weeks since our return from Chicago. That's not that long, just 5 weeks. And yesterday, when the pest control guy came to spray the outside of our homes, I just went out. I didn't have a mask on. I almost shook his hand. And I definitely wasn't standing within 6 feet. I was standing a little, like the normal 3 feet away from a person. And I had completely, for a few minutes, forgotten about all of the social distancing, all of the safety measures that I had been stressed about and implementing on a maximum level for just a few weeks prior. And that got me thinking, how in the world could I forget at such a time like this? So it reminded me of a scripture passage in one verse, actually, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 11. Deuteronomy 8:11 says, "Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees that I am giving you this day." Moses tells his people, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees that I'm giving you this day. I mean, how could the Israelites forget? They were just delivered from slavery in Egypt. They had just been delivered from 40 years in the wilderness, living off of manna and quail. How could they forget? And yet Moses says, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God. The human heart easily forgets, unfortunately, as I easily forgot, and as we all easily forget what's going on around us, and we forget the Lord as well. And so I want us to think about today and ongoing, how can we remember the Lord? How can we remember to follow him and to worship him? And the first thing that came to mind was keeping a gratitude journal, which I think is especially helpful and healthy during these times. I had a friend named Kat who for years would write down 3 things she was grateful for. I thought for sure she would forget to do this because we were on a retreat together and she was my roommate. And sure enough, it was like 11:30. We had come back from our evening activities and she popped out her journal, sat in her bed and wrote 3 things. It had become a habit for her. And she said it was life-changing. So I encourage you to maybe try it out, to write down 3 things that you are grateful for, that you are grateful to God for that day. For me, it could be something as simple as remembering to be patient with my children when doing math homework with them, or remembering to say thank you to my mom for a home-cooked meal. Simple things like that. Or it could be something big, like thankful that my friend is getting over the virus and she's on her way to recovery. So just let's take time this week to do what it says in Deuteronomy 8:11, to be careful not to forget what the Lord is doing in our midst, to take time to see how he's on the move in our lives and around us, and to write down things that we're grateful for.